A man was spending a night on the town when a homeless woman took him by surprise.
But before we start, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe and hit the bell so you'll never miss these great stories.
Some of us have been conditioned to think that homeless people are the kinds of people that are no longer worth anything. This then results to us underestimating them to the point that it becomes a form of bullying and mistreatment of another human being. We forget just because they obviously aren't as blessed in social status as us. However, we need to remind ourselves that these people are just regular human beings like us. They have stories and pasts masked behind a face that offers a small smile to anyone that passes by. It's rare nowadays for other people to stop and actually make good conversation with them. It's a harsh and sad reality. Like many young adults these days, the hero of this story started out his night by spending time with friends and having a good time out on the town. He had everything planned out perfectly, just like any other weekend night spent with his friends. He would enjoy and then cap it off with a late midnight meal before going home. This was his routine, and albeit a pretty fun one. After a few years of doing this over and over again, you more or less already know what you're gonna do, but it's always gonna be the same. Friends, games, drinks, and food. But this one particular night would change his life forever. For those who've tried to spend long nights out enjoying and hanging out with friends, we already know that it usually ends up in hunger. And in the wee hours of the night, food options slowly dwindle by the minute, and you have no option but to turn to fast food. After going to clubs one after the other, Jonathan and his friends decided it was still a better option to grab some McDonald's before going home. The place was quick, cheap, and an easy choice to wind down after a long and carefree night out. Because fast food chains close later than your average restaurant, this was the best and quickest option for the group. This is because they want to serve customers who plan to eat late and don't have any other option, and to serve customers who've been partying all night and are looking to unwind. Regardless of the day of the week, people still crowd at McDonald's because it's just a crowd favorite. It's more accessible than most fast food chains, and it is where Jonathan and his friends found themselves after their weekend night escapade. When Jonathan and his group got to the place, it really wasn't crowded. There were still a few people inside, but the line was being held up. This was weird because the place wasn't packed. When he peeked to see what it was, he was surprised. A woman was standing in front of the line looking as if she was unsure what to do, and the cashier was obviously refusing to help her and irritated she was there. Jonathan then drew the conclusion this woman was likely homeless trying to get a meal. The cashier was bent on declining whatever it was the woman wanted. Like the others in line, he leaned in to try and catch what they were talking about. And as it turned out, the homeless woman wasn't ordering, she just wanted one small thing. The homeless woman just wanted some hot water, and the cashier was refusing to give it to her, which was denying the human a basic human right. All food establishments are typically expected to offer free water to anyone who needs it, and this act was violating the woman's rights. He watched as the cashier put her hand out and outright said no to the woman. The woman, on the other hand, didn't push the matter further and eventually left the counter obviously dejected. She walked out the restaurant and into the cold with nothing to eat and no warm water. Jonathan felt as if his chest was being crushed at the sight of the woman turned away. He was overly concerned and followed her out into the cold. He tried to catch up to her in hopes that he could help her out and offer to get her something. As soon as Jonathan approached the woman, he knew that this woman was different than all the other homeless people he'd met. He asked if he could get her anything and expected to answer with a laundry list of things she needed, as obviously she doesn't have the luxury of buying whatever she can. But he was wrong. What shocked him the most was the woman's response to his question. Not because she wanted a lot of things or requested too much from him, it was the fact that she just wanted a single cheeseburger. Jonathan was stunned. It was so simple, yet he did have a hard time believing that was all she needed. After all, she did enter the establishment and ask for hot water, so he clarified and asked her if there was anything else. The woman just shook her head and explained that she did have a friend who needed something to eat and they were going to share the cheeseburger. Jonathan was dumbfounded at how the woman, despite being homeless, had so much humility. As soon as he realized the woman was worth helping, he turned and headed for the direction of the restaurant, eager to help them out and get them the food they deserve. His friends were in on it too, and they also figured that the more food they could provide for the woman and her friend, the better it was. Jonathan and his friends ordered as much food and drinks as they could carry and brought the food outside where the woman and her friend patiently waited. The homeless women were surprised to find that Jonathan and his friends decided to camp out and eat with them. It wasn't a few minutes later that both women started sharing their stories. Both the homeless women were becoming more and more at ease with Jonathan's group that they decided they weren't bad people. They loosened up, and so they suddenly spoke up and shared their past. The woman who'd just been turned away from McDonald's was called Polly. She and her friend had been homeless for many years, and so they were left to fend for themselves on the streets. But that, even though they got a lot of rejections from establishments and other people, that wasn't the hardest. The most painful experience was being mocked at and ridiculed. The one common misconception some of us have about homeless people is that they're all unfortunate bums that have no idea how the world works. But Jonathan and his friends were in for a surprise when they got to speak to Polly and her friend. In an interview he did with his son, he said, When I got to speak with them, I was genuinely shocked at their story and how educated they were. So full of life and enthusiasm, and they were literally have nothing. It was as if being homeless was just a challenge they'd already accepted they needed to take. While we've always been warned by our parents not to let strangers in our house, Jonathan thought this was something he and only he could do for them. So he asked Polly if she and her friend would like to come over his place to freshen up. Jonathan knew this was going to be something new to Polly and her friend, as living out in the streets for such a long time can definitely take a toll on your judgment. This is why Jonathan realized the importance of a roof over his head and being able to sleep comfortably and staying warm despite the cold. Jonathan didn't expect Polly and her friend to agree to his proposal immediately, but they did anyway, as they knew that the kindness of the stranger that offered them only comes once in a lifetime. So they took a ride home together with Jonathan and they talked more about their past. When they arrived, Jonathan showed them the bathroom and offered them toiletries they could use to clean up. Polly and her friend brushed their teeth and bathed comfortably, something they haven't done in ages. While Polly and her friend had been busying themselves and taking turns freshening up, Jonathan had been also busy downstairs trying to pack as many goods he could give to the ladies. He thought that by giving them food, it was going to be much more convenient for Polly and her friend than begging for scraps. Jonathan later realized he provided them with food and a quick bath. He was going above and beyond for strangers he'd only met a few hours ago, but he insisted in doing so because he knew it was the right thing to do. He couldn't imagine them going hungry again. Jonathan and Polly had talked some more, talking about both their pasts. He discovered she was this bright woman who hadn't lost all faith in humanity despite being turned down more times she can count. Next thing he knew, he was crying. His heart broke for Polly and her friend. It wasn't because he felt pity, but because he had this renewed sense of purpose after talking to Polly. He did everything he could to make sure that Polly and her friend could never go cold as well. He packed warm blankets and pillows to go with the food. He bid farewell and dropped Polly and her friend off at a shelter so they could get comfortable for the night. But even though he's given everything in his power, something was still nagging at him, and the things he gave to both women would only last for a time. He knew it was time for a change. Jonathan took to Facebook to describe his experience that evening and how his conversation with Polly changed his life. He also made sure to note that McDonald's refused Polly a cup of warm water when she needed it, and it was just wrong on so many levels. He wrote, "I don't know what was going on through the cashier's mind, but a lady clearly homeless was asking for a basic human right, and for a multi-billion-pound company for them to say no is disgusting." He expressed his displeasure at the fact that Polly and her friend had been underestimated. His heartfelt recollection of the night immediately went viral. He gained the sympathy of the whole nation, and they shared his sentiments too. Although this wasn't the fast food chain's first time regarding the issue, sooner or later the company will have to answer the important questions. Just like Hound Dogs, the media caught wind of the brewing issue, and days later, McDonald's was pressured into releasing a statement, as they should. The spokeswoman for the company stated that the homeless are welcome into any of their locations, and that a vast majority of their requests are usually met. However, as it turns out, the spokeswoman said that the reason why the cashier had to refuse Polly was because she was banned from the location. She went on to state that the company works with the police to ban certain individuals on the basis of illegal and antisocial behavior, but wouldn't explain further which category Polly fell under. Though the company didn't really provide much clarity on the issue with Polly being banned, a lot of people still weren't happy at how she'd been refused when all she wanted was water. But if there was something good that came out of it, it was her friendship with Jonathan. This story's a strong reminder to all of us that homeless people are just like us. They have stories and past just like any other person you pass by in a crowd. If we only open ourselves to the possibility of cohabitating peacefully with these people, then we might even feel less compelled to avoid them like they had something contagious. We're all human, and we're only trying to survive day by day.